everyone. Welcome to the 5-Beer Plan. I'm Brian, and this is the ongoing saga of an everyman's ale trail. In this episode, I turn to a German strain of yeast, ramp things up on the homebrew project, head to Metro Detroit to ride the rails with Eli Green, and review a fun take on a classic German style of beer. But before we get this party started, here is this episode's burning question. What is your favorite Weizenbach? My favorite is called Wolfenstein from Ardwolf Brewing Company in Jacksonville, Florida. I had this beer near the end of our impromptu 2023 beer crawl. The only thing I noted in my check-in was that it was a great example of the style. Though I rated it highly, clearly it had been a long day for my wife and I. In this segment of Yeast Feast, where I investigate yeast, a German classic rises up. Not everyone is keen on German wheat beers, because of the bitterness that comes from the grain that dominates the sweeter malts, or even the spicy flavor profile. These beers are also referred to Weiss beers, which is literally translated to white beer. Weizenbier is another term for the style and includes such substyles as Hefeweizen, Kristallweizen, Dunkelweizen, and Weizenbach. Not to be a weizen-heimer, but what makes a Weizenbier a Weizenbier? Some of the characteristics of the style are high carbonation, a cloudy appearance, and the notes of banana and clove that abound. As we have learned in past segments, yeast has a strong impact on the flavor and the aroma of the beer. When brewing such a beer, the most popular strain of yeast used for such beers across the world is Weihenstephan yeast strain. For some background, Weihenstephan refers to the Bavarian state brewery Weihenstephan. Located in Freising, Bavaria, Germany, it is the world's oldest brewery, founded in 1040. Weihenstephan has a long and rich history as a monastery brewery and now operates as a state-directed enterprise. The Weihenstephan strain has a low flocculation and apparent attenuation of 73 to 77%. Tolerant up to 10% ABV, it is relatively temperature intolerant, needing a range of only 64 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Interestingly, according to Yeast Labs, the balance of banana ester and clove spiciness can be manipulated toward ester production through increasing the fermentation temperature, increasing the wort density, and decreasing the pitch rate. Also, if overpitched, the banana notes will almost totally disappear, so it is important to carefully calculate your yeast pitch rate with Weiss beers. So the next time you enjoy a Weiss beer, think of all the work the yeast has put into it. In this segment of Homebrew Hijinks, where I share my personal homebrew experience, it's time to initiate boiling on the small-time chocolate porter. Once the mash was completed, it was time to start the boil. I took a pre-boil gravity reading that after temperature adjustment came in at just 1043. This was over 10 points lower than I was expecting, so I would need to address this to ensure I would hit my original gravity numbers. A quick calculation showed that approximately 4 ounces of table sugar should give me at least 10 points for the gravity reading. I was already adding some dark brown sugar for a little character, so I determined about half of that would be fine. With the hot basket in place for the 60-minute boil, I added the table sugar to the kettle and 3 grams of Chinook hops to the basket. With 15 minutes remaining, I added 3 grams of Cascade hops. With 10 minutes remaining in the boil, I added a 1/4 ounce of cacao nibs to the hot basket and 3 ounces of dark brown sugar to the kettle. These later additions would hopefully give me some flavor layers in the beer. At this point, I also prepared my ice bath in the sink. At the end of the 60 minutes, I took the kettle off the burner and drew out 2/3 of a cup of the wort with a measuring cup and set it aside to cool slightly. I slowly drained all the remaining liquid from my hot basket into the kettle and then set that aside in a bowl so that it wouldn't make a mess. With the wort cooled slightly, with a temperature adjustment, my original gravity was 1076, quite a bit higher than my target. Maybe I should not have added that additional table sugar after all. Wanting to stay true to the style I was brewing for the fair, I started to panic. This was shaping up to have an ABV much higher than a typical porter. I had already submitted the entry, so I was not sure what I would do. But more about that later. Next episode, it's time to pitch the yeast. Now, it's time for Barstool Banter. This episode, I stay a bit closer to home and interview Eli Green, owner of recently opened Stumblebum Beer Company in Troy, Michigan. We talk about the challenges of opening a brewery, why he chose the location, what makes Stumblebum unique to Metro Detroit, and what it takes to manage a lean operation. Welcome to Barstool Banter. I'm sitting down with Eli Green from Stumblebum Beer Company in Troy, Michigan. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me on the podcast, Eli.
Hey, thank you, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you up front. My recent schedule's been a little bit chaotic, so I know we've pushed this off a few times, so thanks for your flexibility.
And not a problem. My days are always different. Things coming in, things coming out.
Yep.
You got to be able to be flexible.
Absolutely. Can you tell me what your role is there at the brewery?
I am the owner and the operator. My role, as I see it, is setting the vibe, developing and maintaining the brand identity, getting people in the door, and empowering my staff to do what it is that they're good at doing. Yeah, and being the face of the company.
How long has Stumblebum been open?
Just over a year, actually. We did our soft opening started June 1st, 2024.
Wow. Hey, congrats.
Oh, thank you.
I think it's always really interesting to talk with brewery startups. The last two interviews I've done here on the show actually were two breweries that have been open for less than a year in Central Florida. What kind of challenges did you face opening the brewery there?
I mean, speaking of build out, it's hectic. It's a lot of fun. We took over a space that was a 10,000 square foot sports bar. We put a wall in the middle and just took 4,100 square feet of it. But we took their bar, we took their kitchen and office space. So there was a lot of infrastructure to work with. But the biggest challenge really was dealing locally with the city. We were ready to start production, and then suddenly we were handed a delay that caused us 4 months. And it was because there was a mechanical inspector who didn't know really what was going on in this business. It was an industry he clearly wasn't familiar with, what processes and equipment are involved. And, instead of sort of deferring to people on my team who did know, or code experts and things, he just decided, to hand us a bunch of hurdles that weren't really relevant. But what are you going to do other than try and work through that? Like I said, we were ready to start production. Got to get this train moving.
Yeah, and especially when you get this dream in your mind, this glimmer in your eye, where you're like, "This is what I want to do. This is what I'm passionate about," and then you get faced with these roadblocks, like you're saying. I mean, it's got to be really frustrating. And
Yeah,
of course, it costs money because time is money.
it does. And, it's like you try and say, hey, there are a bunch of small breweries around this area, maybe not in Troy, but a bunch of them. And I think you'll find if you ask around that we're not doing anything that these other guys aren't also doing in very similar ways.
Yes.
you know?
And that was the other thing I was thinking about. You're kind of located in a strip mall, I think, is if I can describe it that way, right?
Yeah, it is a strip mall,
more or less. So Metro Detroit has, and Metro Detroit, I mean, for those that don't know Detroit, you've got Detroit in the middle, and you've got all these little suburbs around the outside. There are a good number of breweries that are in the Metro Detroit area. There really are.
It's a really good place for beer. And one of my notes is that it feels from the inside like we're under the radar for some reason.
Yeah.
We don't come up in the discussion of beer places in Michigan, much less nationally.
Right. Yeah, I feel like Grand Rapids gets all the glory. I mean, they're Beer City, USA, which I understand, right? I don't disagree with you. I've been to enough breweries in the Metro Detroit area as well to know that there are some real gems there, including yours. Detroit's always got a bad rap. It doesn't matter whether it's, the Lions or the Red Wings, it doesn't matter what it is about Detroit. It always gets a bad rap.
I know that the mantra is that Detroit is coming back, but Detroit is back.
And just
Yeah.
like any large metropolitan area, there are places where, yes, you don't want to go. But in general, Detroit is awesome. I mean, all the
Yeah.
sports venues, all the concert venues, I mean, the restaurants, I mean, the bar scene, breweries. There's so much to do in Detroit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why did you choose Troy?
I was born and raised here. We
Okay,
lived here until I was 15. So this is my hometown. I haven't lived
awesome.
here since I was 15, but I know what it's like to grow up here. I know the kind of areas we have. I know why people love to live in Troy. And I also know the common refrains as to like the sort of things there are to do and things there aren't to do within the city itself. And I thought, a small independent brewery would be welcome. And I've found that that's true.
And I feel like, again, you're one of those hidden gems because you are tucked into this strip mall, so to speak. But once you get in there, it's like it's just a great space. I just really love it.
Oh,
So
thank you. Yeah.
yeah, you're
It
welcome.
was it was important to me before we found what the vibe was actually going to be. It was just when you walk in, you got to know that you're here
Yeah,
and you're not anywhere else.
yeah.
I think probably all of your listeners, you and I, we go to a lot of breweries. And I think when you get to a point, you realize that some of these places start to feel the same. And the
Yeah.
really good ones are like, oh, there's an idea and a vibe here. And they've brought that vision to life. And it feels good when you're in a place like that.
Absolutely. When I talked with you several months back, when I met a coworker there for a couple of beers, and he was surprised, like, "Well, you didn't even know there was a brewery here. There's a Kroger next door. I didn't know there's a brewery here."
I've been told this, at my previous job, I recognize this that you can get 5 years in, you're still going to have people walking in the door saying, I had no idea you were here. Getting your name out there is a never ending struggle,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you got to be on it.
And I think also in the craft industry, with so many options, you really have one good chance to like make an impression and for people to say, "Wow, I love this place. I want to come back again." So, what makes Stumblebum unique then to the industry in that sense?
Well, I got to give credit to my staff. We have a very lean crew, but all of them have experience either specifically in craft beer or in bartending in general. So when people walk in the door, I can be confident that they are getting a high level of service and knowledge and experience. And the guy making the beer is incredibly meticulous. So I know that I can say, you can't make a bad decision. Just depends on what you're looking for. But what makes us unique is, I think, my obsession is beer and cheese. It's a combination that no one is talking about, but it's the best. So I wanted to bring this sort of program of, okay, we'll have a little cheese plate, and each of those cheeses will be paired with a beer, and you can get that flight curated right in front of you with a little cheat sheet telling you what you're doing. Or you're free to explore with any of the other number of beers. Everyone's palate's different. There's no one right answer. There are lots of wrong answers, but there's rarely one right
Yeah.
answer for these pairings. So encouraging people to explore that. One of the things that was important to me is that we be a space that is of value to the community beyond just making good beer and having a place to go and hang out. So we have made a lot of contacts locally with nonprofits or community groups, local professional soccer teams that we can help spread the word about each other and also raise money to help whatever cause you got going for you. So every month we'll choose one beer and we'll partner with a charity. And every time you buy that beer, we pledge X amount back to that charity.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's one of the things about the craft industry that it's a common theme is that philanthropic theme of engaging with the community and trying to be part of the community and being that community gathering spot. I think that's really important in today's day and age of when we could walk around and all we're doing is we're, doing this all day long on our phones,
Yeah, yeah.
It really is a nice option to have that there.
And we don't have TVs, speaking of screens. You may have noticed, it seems from feedback, conspicuous absence of TVs. But I think that once people sit down and they start enjoying the environment there, that you make connections with the person sitting next to you when you don't have a screen to look at.
Yeah. And that's another common thing that I hear more and more with breweries that I've talked to over the past year is that they don't want that television there. They don't want to have that distraction. They want people to be interacting and enjoying themselves and enjoying the beers. How do you see your brewery kind of shaping the culture and community around the Troy area, like let's say in 5 years from now?
Well, I think we were talking earlier about just Metro Detroit sort of being beneath the radar
Yeah.
when we have so much good beer here. So I just in terms of, helping to elevate that, elevate the community and get another place here, just try to draw the light to Metro Detroit in terms of craft beer. And I want to be part of that conversation when people talk about the best places in Michigan, leading by example too. And this idea that we aren't just places that make and sell beer. We can be of value to the people who come and are of value to us by buying our product.
Bring the light to Metro Detroit. You ought to use that as a
Yeah.
tagline, dude.
Oh, yeah. I'll write that down.
That's beautiful. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. So on your website, your motto is it's not where you are, but your reason for being there. So how did that come about and really what does it mean at its base?
How did it come about? We had settled on this sort of hobos and trains theme in our place, and I started listening to a lot of bluegrass, old bluegrass, and
Okay.
so Utah Phillips ended up in that mix, and it's from a song called Phoebe Snow, which is about this decision to get on a train and go, and the freedom and the joy and the pain and the sorrow that comes with all of it. Sort of the ending thesis that he leaves you with is it's not where you are, but your reason for being there. And for me, that rang true because of some of the things we've been talking about of, when you go to enough breweries, it's the ones that feel like they've had a vision and a goal and that they've brought it to life. And those are the places that have decided or figured out what their reason for being there is. And so for me, that was okay. It's not enough to like to make beer, to like to talk about beer and drink beer. Those are all valid reasons to get into the industry, but everybody in the industry can say that. So why am I here? Became the question.
Yeah, cool. The name Stumblebum. So tell me what that means.
That is an old alias that I used to use online in like video games or, tabletop stuff like that. And I don't know what made it pop back into my head when I had to think of an idea for a name for my brand, but there it was. And a buddy of mine offered to help me sort of develop a logo and a brand story. And so we sort of fell into this idea that it kind of sounds like the name of the hobo. And so he took that and he ran with it. Our logo is the bindle stick, but instead of a handkerchief, it's a little hot plant tied to the end there.
Yeah, it's cool.
And I like any specific idea. I did not know much about trains or hobos. Wasn't a particular interest of mine, but it was a specific idea. And I said, okay, 150%. Trains, hobos. I'm going to start reading about hobos. I'm going to listen to bluegrass music from old timers who used to ride the rails, right?
That's awesome. So, in the little town I live in, which is Pioneer, Ohio, there used to be a rail line that ran from here to Toledo. And there was a small little railroad that was called the Toledo and Western, and they called it the T&W. They kind of playfully called it the Teeter and Wobble. My grandparents would tell stories about how the hobos, the salesmen, they'd come on the train, they drop into town and look for places they could just hang out for the night, get a meal, that sort of thing. That culture in it, and it's fascinating just how that was back at the turn of the century and how important it was.
I got really interested in the tourist union that hobos created because there were a bunch of anti-vagrancy laws that were essentially there to keep people from doing what hobos were doing, which is freely traveling, finding employment where you land. But if you were unionized, you didn't need a permanent address.
Ah, okay,
So
okay.
they unionized and now they're in a union. And so they developed the Hobo Code of Ethics ultimately to help maintain a level of legitimacy among the workers' unions. Like this wasn't just a way of getting around laws. This is how we're going to live. And this is how we're going to support each other. And this is how we're going to keep the towns that we end up in happy that we're there and not see us as a burden
I,
or freeloaders or anything like that. This
yeah,
is a way of life.
I love that. I really love
Yeah.
that. And they had like there was one person every year that would come to town and would come to stay with them from Toledo or someplace else that would ride the rails. One of those things that you don't do these days.
It's also incredibly dangerous. Trains get up to speed in like a mile, whereas
Yeah,
you'd have 5 miles in the day where it's just chugging along.
yeah, yeah.
5 mile stretch you can hop on. Not so today. It is incredibly dangerous.
It has changed a lot in the last 100
Yeah.
years. So, how large of a brewing system do you have there at Stumblebum?
We are on 5 barrels for our mash tun. So we got 4 5 barrel tanks and 1 10 barrel. As it turns out, when we did our volume testing, our boil kettle is like just over 7 barrels. So our brewer uses that to, if he wants to make a really large batch of a lager or an IPA, he'll overbuild it in the kettle and then do his dilutions in order to get it to a higher volume so that, once we do our dry hop and all that and all the losses, we end up with 5 barrels if
Okay.
we need to, rather than starting at 5 and ending up 3, 3.5.
Okay. What brand of system do you have there?
We went with Stout tanks and kettles. Yeah, so we bought all of our starting equipment from them. We don't have a proper bright tank yet. It is kind of on, that's one of the first big improvements we're looking to make. That way we can start really thinking about doing large canning runs, getting some of that equipment in, and really dialing in our process. That's probably the next big investment in there. We have the unitank style, which it'll get you halfway there, but thankfully Chris really knows what he's doing, so we're able to get a nice clear finished product. All of our lagers are crystal clear.
Yeah, yeah, for
Um,
sure. How long has Chris been with you?
since the beginning, he was the first
Okay.
employee. I was looking down the barrel of like trying to find someone to help out there, but still kind of being back there running the show. We got introduced through a mutual friend. I hadn't met him until he walked through the door to interview.
Okay.
But we got our mutual friend vouched for both of us, and I was like, this is a guy who just wants to make beer. I need to be able to focus on the business and turn my back on the brewery. And this is a guy who can be fine operating like that. So it quickly became, how do I get him to say yes?
The other thing that I think I'm hearing, you've really been intentional about finding people to work for Stumblebum that are going to really be advocates for the brand, that are going to be those frontline employees that are really going to make that experience, your visitors, the top notch. So,
Yeah.
kudos to you for that.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm very fortunate.
It's not easy, especially I think again the service industry I think is another beast altogether when it comes to hiring people and hiring good people for that matter.
Yeah, and while I haven't worked in the brewing industry or, been owner or manager of a restaurant, I've done every role in a restaurant from washing dishes to bartending, serving. I know what it's like working on the front lines, and I know what complaints I had about my leadership at the bad jobs, and I know
Yeah,
what compliments I had toward the leadership in my good jobs.
yeah,
So I just got to sort of follow those examples. And at the end of the day, it's on me. I got a really good crew who are able to maintain their schedules. And, I know life happens, but, when people can't be at work or when things get really busy, it's on me. I
yeah.
take 3 shifts in the kitchen. I try to be there during peak hours behind the bar, running food, chatting with customers, all that sort of stuff.
It's your business, so you have to
Yeah.
do that. You have to be the stopgap in those
Yeah.
places.
Last call.
It's nearly time to wrap things up, but first, one more for the road. This episode, I'm drinking The Birth of the Fat King from Loaded Dice Brewery, formerly of Troy, Michigan. Unfortunately, they closed their doors earlier this year. I was fortunate enough to have pre-ordered the Fat King variety pack last fall and brought it home. From the brewer, part of the Fat King series of Weizenbach, this variant is more banana forward and has a lower ABV. Without further delay, this is a 6.7% ABV Weizenbach. So, I first heard about Loaded Dice and their Fat King series from my good friend Daryl, who had attended the Great American Beer Fest last October. Since the brewery was located in the Metro Detroit area, and he knew that I worked from that area, he suggested I stop in and check him out. I did have owner and head brewer Jeff on the podcast late last year. So I poured this out into a nice chalice. I figured that a beer for a king needed to be in a chalice. So it poured a deep amber color with a fine white head that is lingering quite a bit, surprisingly. On the nose, I'm getting a lot of peanut butter there. Now, for those that may or may not be familiar with Elvis, one of Elvis's favorite things to do was to have a peanut butter and banana sandwich, and that was always kind of the running joke. So even on the can art, there's a baby Elvis who has a microphone that has the bottom of it stuck into a peanut butter and banana sandwich. It's quite funny. First up impression. Yeah. All right. So I get that nice banana forward flavor. Very nice. It's light and fruity. It really hits the spot. I'd say from a beer standpoint, it's probably a medium body. But again, going back in for the nose, it really has that nice, strong peanut butter aroma on it. In fact, maybe just a little bit of the banana esters are starting to emerge from that as well. We've talked about retronasal tasting before in this first season of the podcast, I believe. When I do a little bit of retronasal tasting with this beer, I get pretty much the whole package. I get this whole kind of banana, peanut butter, bready flavor and aroma that are all kind of mixed in together. It's really very well done and very well executed. On the finish, it's got a little bit of a bitterness, just a little bit of a bite. And again, that bitterness is coming from the wheat, which is going to dominate the grain bill in this case. There is a fair amount of sweetness on this beer. It's not overly so, but it certainly is there. Really balances out that wheat bitterness. This is just such an interesting beer. I'm really sorry that this isn't available any longer. It's really a fantastic beer. Yes, a Bock is more of a fall to winter style beer, but anyone that's listened to me on the podcast knows I really don't care what season I drink beer. I just want to enjoy good beer. And this is one of those beers that is just really solid. So certainly this is a true to style Weizenbock. Like I said, a great homage to the king. And you know, Jeff, I'm so glad that I was able to get this before you had to close your doors. So I give this one 4 tasters out of 5 on the flight board. Cheers, loaded dice, and I'm still missing you. I'm always looking for new craft beverages to review. So if you've got one from your favorite local craft brewery, meadery, or cidery you'd like me to drink and describe, reach out and let me know. That's all for this episode of the 5 Beer Plan. With so many podcasts out there, thanks for choosing to listen to mine. Join me next time as I continue the homebrew project, hop off the train with Eli at Stumblebum Beer Company, and review another beer. Remember to hit the subscribe button on your preferred podcast platform to be notified of new episodes. Follow me on Instagram as well, 5 Beer Plan 2022, to see what is happening on my personal ale trail. I'd love to hear from you, and there are several ways you may do so. Leave a comment for this episode on Spotify, direct message me on Instagram, or email me directly, 5beerplan@frontier.com. Be sure to support your local breweries, choose your beers wisely, and drink them responsibly. Until next time, keep walking your ale trail, and stay thirsty, my friends.